10 exercises for strength training. So if you are just getting in here one last time, please share what exercise gets you excited for your strength training session. We'd love to see, and just share with others as well, because some people are here for the reason of learning and just wanting to, maybe get into strength training. So just trying to develop more of that database, if you will, of exercises. But yes, so with this session, again, it is going to be recorded. And we will share this through our Teams channel and maybe even upload it to YouTube as well. So you'll have plenty of opportunity if you need to dismiss yourself early, or if you are here watching the recording, you'll be able to catch up on some of the things you might have missed. But yes, this was a challenging list, not only for myself, but as Carolyn shared as well, challenging for her, because we have a lot of different exercises that we recognize as like important or our top exercises. And we can kind of pull from maybe different methodologies or different even approaches with different individuals. So it's going to be ladies first here. So I'm going to start with Carolyn. And so I see on her list, push-up, rows, lunges, planks, and bird dogs. But before Carolyn gets into that, I want to ask you more about your methodology. Okay. So what is functional training? What is progressive movement, postural development? The ones that you've identified here in front of us. Like, talk more about that. Why? How did it translate into your top 5?
Sounds good. Yeah. So like we said, it was challenging, as everybody's goals are different, right? So it's based on your goals on what exercises you should do. But if we're just talking about top 5, what methodology should I use to come up with my top 5? So I kind of thought about, well, functional training is really important, like things that we need, movements that we will always need to do to really increase our activities of daily living forever, right? For lifetime. Like, what are those things? What are they? And then what are things that, kind of work with each other? Like we have a push exercise and a pull exercise. We're getting in that muscular balance on the front end and the back end. Right. And then what is progressive? Like if I'm doing a wall push-up, for example, right, that's where I'm starting. Maybe that's what I can do right now, but I can progress from a wall push-up to a quadruped push-up to a kneeling push-up to a push-up on my toes to a clap push-up to a medicine ball push-up. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Right.
And that's really the case for all of these 5 exercises, because you can continually improve and improve and improve as you get stronger. And then that postural development, so important, right? We, as a society, are constantly leaning over, as I am doing, obviously, right now, right? So I just noticed that I'm like, I got to sit up taller. So, what are those exercises that are going to help us really increase our posture and help us to decrease any type of pain or injury? Because when we have good posture, it helps us in that sense. And also that's going to help with your core stability and your mobility. So all these things kind of bundle together on how we should pick those top 5 exercises. So that's kind of how I came up with these 5.
Yeah, absolutely. And the progressive component, that's something that I hold true to myself too with my methodologies. I didn't state it, as you'll find out a little bit later, but being able to improve upon, what you've done before is so key. Yeah. So you ready to start with the push-ups?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. So think about, the most bang for my buck. That's where I like to come from. So you can see like, okay, well, here's some push-ups in a kneeling position. That's the first one. But then also you can progress that to a standard push-up. And like I said, you can start with a wall push-up. You can go to an all fours or a quadruped push-up as well, if you're not ready for that kneeling push-up. So you can progress along the way. So this is a push-up. If you're not familiar with what it is, here you go. This is your push-up. So if you come to my class, you try doing a push-up.
Yeah, and quadruped, you mean hands and knees?
Correct, hands and knees. Okay. Yes, thank you for asking. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's the push-up. So, and then our next exercise is that row. Now, a row could be a lot of different things, and so that's why I just kind of put it that way. But you could do a seated row, and you could see on these pictures on the after or the ending position that those shoulder blades are really squeezing together. In all of those, whether you're seated, standing, or using a dumbbell. That dumbbell one is a single arm row. So whatever equipment that you have available, you can do it. So it's convenient. But everyone is squeezing those shoulder blades together, really working on that posture. Yes, you could also use a great rowing machine as well. If you're really pulling back, it's a cardio movement, but you're also getting in that posture exercise with a rowing machine as well.
Right. Yeah. Especially when the person executing the exercise is really focusing on keeping their shoulders kind of rolled. I always like to say kind of rolled back and down.
Yes,
Just that's that posture component. And for us in a kind of
absolutely.
a desk setting, we spend a lot of time. Gosh, even my posture is really poor, but we kind of spend a lot of time hunched over here for typing and whatnot.
Absolutely. Yep. I always say put your shoulders in your back pocket. So it's kind of that same thing you said,
Ooh,
up and back, down and back, put them in your back pocket.
that's a
Yep. So
great
that's the
cue.
row. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
All right. Then we have that lunge series. And so I was thinking, should I pick one lunge or how do I just pick one? Because I want to think about different planes of movement. So, when we're walking, right, we're always moving forward. Our bodies are constantly going in that plane. So let's talk about a lunge series where we're getting into different planes. So not only are we just going forward all the time or just backward, we're also going laterally
Mhm.
because we need to, really use those muscles, those adductor, abductor muscles as well, those inner outer thigh muscles. So here you can see there's, front lunge using a dumbbell, but you don't have to use dumbbells because in the second one, you see there's no weight at all, and that's a lateral lunge. And then the last one is that reverse lunge. Now you can see this one is using a barbell. So lots of ways you can do it. You can use a body bar. You can use a kettlebell. There's just so many different tools that you can use. And then you're getting in all these different movements. Convenience
Yes.
again, because you don't have to have any equipment to do it.
Yeah, and one of mine, as we'll talk about here, I speak to that lateral component as well, because you're
Mhm.
absolutely right, and I've noticed it too. Is if you really think about our daily lives, it's just all somewhat forward moving or
Mhm.
this linear direction. So we're not getting a lot of that muscular development, if you will, for the sides of our hips,
Right.
legs, that stuff. So yeah, I love might be the hockey player in me, but I love the lateral stuff.
Mm. Right. Hockey would be good. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
true.
And then with the reverse lunge, have you found it with people that you've worked with or people that, or even for yourself? Does the reverse lunge seem to kind of be a little more careful or appropriate for people that have like maybe some frequent knee pain or stuff?
That's a great point, and that is so true. Yes, I would definitely have people start with the reverse lunge. You have a little bit more control in that sense. You're not, and the form is it's easier because you can really focus on how far back am I stepping. You don't have to step back a huge amount, so you can really control the depth of the movement. So you're not really putting a lot of extra strain on your knees. But when you go to that forward lunge, if you have any knee issues, you really have to pay attention to, is my knee, pushing forward over my toes? You got to be careful of the form there. And you don't have as much control in that forward lunge motion.
Sure. Very well.
All right, then we have
Planks.
the good old plank and the forearm plank. So good core stability here. This is awesome. And again, you can progress this to so many different levels. So you could start out with a kneeling plank. You could go to the forearm plank. You go to a high plank. You can go to a arm reach plank. You can go to leg reach plank. You can go to jumping plank, a walking plank. I mean, the list goes on and on again, which I love.
Mhm.
And then also you can see in the other picture, we have the side planks. So we're also getting in those obliques, the sides of the abdominals as well. So you can rotate or alternate from side to side, really focusing on core rotation, which is so important because we need that. We need to keep our body rotating for activities of daily living.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we haven't talked about it quite yet, but when it comes to planks, which I wish I could have put this one on my top
Mm-hmm.
five, but didn't want to overlap you. But with any of these exercises, but especially the core, because we are, both you and I are a little bit more core centric,
Right.
approaches, is that mind to muscle connection. And I think
Mm-hmm.
people forget about that, and so they might just get into an exercise or they grab dumbbells or some sort of resistance weight and just go to work. They're just getting repetitions in.
Yep.
But if you really want to make the most out of what you're doing, you need to be intentional about it and really think and connect. Even if it's just a basic bicep curl, you're thinking, how am I contracting that bicep? How am I squeezing it to get the most out of it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always tell my class, okay, if it's just bicep curl, okay, engage the core, now lift, squeeze, focus on the biceps, know what muscle you're using, down, then bring it down. Okay, engage the core, now pull. So, you're getting in all of those motions all the time. You're using your core all the time. Yeah.
True.
Mm-hmm. And then my last one is the bird dog, or spinal balance for those of you who are more yoga based, because that's a name for it in that sense. But this is reaching the opposite. So you're reaching your right arm forward with your left leg extending back. So good mind body exercise there. You really got to get those cognitive skills going. And it does sometimes take a little bit of practice to really reach those opposites, but that's really great. And it's a really great exercise for core stability. Any physical therapist will tell you this is the number one exercise to do if you have any low back issues. So this is, which most people do. So this is a really, really great functional exercise.
Yes. Again, another one that's on my top 100 or,
Right?
But yes, I mean, looking into and having the opportunities to like work with physical therapists, not as a patient, but from like a fitness, this fitness side of things. It's really interesting that so much of this movement comes, draw a line across the back, from like right shoulder into the left glute and then out into that leg. One thing that people tend to maybe over accentuate with this is that lift of the leg and the arm. And so because this is a core exercise, a spinal balance or spinal stability exercise, you do need to keep, as I'll talk a little bit more about it, like you have your own kind of built-in weight belt, essentially, all through the stomach and then into the back. And so you don't want that to break or move more than it needs to, or more than kind of your natural sway of that lower back. And so,
yeah, really great point. I would say, pretend you have like a water, like a glass of water on your tailbone. You don't want to spill the water, right? So don't extend too high up with the arm or too high up with the leg, because you're going to have a little bit of a hollow there, and your water glass might spill over.
Yep.
So
and
keep it stable.
You're disengaging your core, and we need to engage it. Very good.
Absolutely.
Yes. Great 5. I love those. And I
All right, let's hear yours.
Okay. So mine get a little maybe complex or wordy. But again, kind of my focus, similar to Carolyn's, but slightly different with my experiences. So as you can see, I come from a strength and conditioning background. So I worked with hockey players specifically for 5-6 years or so. So I'm a little bit more athlete training minded, which in this environment, I try to blend with, again, just people who used to be athletes, or just the needs of just corporate, employees, or our, people here, just the needs that they need. So posterior chain development, and then again, the core training, but I kind of, shifted more so into the functional core. So
tell me a little bit more about the posterior chain development. Like for those who, what does that mean?
Yes. So posterior chain meaning the muscles that are all interconnected through your backside. So going back to your bird dogs, that's really what you're training with the bird dogs is, like your lats connected to the connective tissue of your lower back, into then the core as well, again, for that spinal stability, and then the glutes, being able to extend, etc. So from an athlete perspective, training the posterior chain of an athlete, as well as, again, the front of the body, the anterior chain, if you will, the ability for an athlete to slow themselves down and immediately, within a split second, be able to produce force again into their next action. Maybe it's a sprint or a sidestep. Sorry if I'm moving too much, but it helps with the explanation, or a jump or whatever it may be. Being able to slow yourself down helps you then produce immediate force. That in turn goes into speed, power, strength as well. So that's where, as my fitness transformation people can probably attest to, most of the workouts that they do incorporate maybe 80%, a high percentage of work for the muscles, the lats,
hmm
the glutes, the hamstrings. We still do the stuff, and we still do the quads, the chest and stuff for that full body approach, but it's more so helping and aiding with maybe minimizing or decreasing low
hmm
back pain that might have been
Yeah.
brought on from being seated too long. Because then we're working on strong glutes, strong core, that kind of stuff. So that's where that posterior chain development kind of comes into play. Again, it's a little bit
hmm
different in an athlete training environment versus, here, general population or employee population. But like I said, I like to blend it together as best I can to just help decrease or more of a preventative measure as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and most people are anterior dominant, anyway,
Mhm.
whether you're athlete or not. Well, everybody's an athlete in their own right, but
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So my first exercise, Pallof press. I generally like to have people do this one with a resistance band, but you can do this one with like a cable machine. But the whole idea of this one, going back to the functional core training or just core training in general, is an element called anti-rotation. So as you brought up, you like to train the rotational aspect, which is absolutely important, but sometimes we need to work on and have the ability to oppose forces. Again, going back to hip stability, spine stability, core strength. So with this one, the idea is not to, so if the resistance band, as you can see from the picture, connected to the wall, the idea is that you're able to get those hands outside of that center of gravity and hold it there for maybe a split second or so before pulling it back in and not letting the band twist you. So again, that mind to muscle connection of really
hmm
engaging the core to stabilize yourself and keep you locked in here as you do this. So as I've told my class participants, you could be the strongest person in the world. If you're doing this the right way, you don't need very much resistance. You don't need the heaviest band, or you don't need to move the weight stack on a cable machine to its heaviest. Again, that really goes back to the mind to muscle connection. So, love this exercise. Again, it's not a rotational exercise, it's
hmm
anti-rotation. So, different movement patterns, different ways.
Yeah,
Yep.
love it.
Then another functional core training one. So farmer's walk or suitcase carry. I want to spend a little bit more time on the suitcase carry aspect because that one kind of throws your spinal stability off a little bit more than the farmer's walk. So with this one, like I said, goes back to that core stability and training. So mind to muscle connection, and you're walking with a moderate to heavy kettlebell or dumbbell, as you can see from the gentleman in the picture. But the idea with this one is as you are keeping that core braced. So I like to use many different analogies. The current one with bracing your core is almost like you're engaging your muscles, tensing your muscles in a way that press against your skin. So if you can imagine that as best you can, and
hmm
sometimes with like your fingers, you can actually like press into your stomach and feel that internal pressure, not only from the muscle engagement, but also somewhat of that your diaphragm or your breath
Yeah.
pressing. Yeah, that's that engagement that you're looking for. But you're just walking, and the whole purpose is to keep your body perpendicular to the floor without overcompensating. So as you can see, this lady has the kettlebell in her left hand. So she's not leaning away from the dumbbell to keep it up. And the kettlebell is not dropping her down. So she's not only using her core, but also into some of those muscles of the lower back that allow you or don't allow you to tip from side to side. So love this one
hmm
from a kind of a functional core stability exercise. So great one to maybe throw in. Like if you're doing a circuit of 3 to 4 exercises, maybe it's your last one. So your fourth out of 4. Throw this one, do it for maybe 45 seconds to a minute. And if you're doing it one-handed, do both sides in a row.
Yeah, right. But you do on one side, you do on the other.
Yep. Um, Again, now to that posterior chain development that you asked me about.
Yeah.
Romanian deadlifts or stiff-legged deadlifts. This one very much so really focused on glute development as well as hamstring development as well. So whether it's with a barbell, dumbbells, you can do it with kettlebells as well. Really trying to get your glutes to activate from that hinge position. That's one of the primary movement patterns, hinging. And so getting your glutes to squeeze and activate to raise yourself back to that upright position. So love this one. I do see a lot of people nowadays doing Romanian deadlifts in some capacity. So many people might be familiar with this one.
Yeah, I see a lot of people doing it too. Yeah. And this had been, one in my top ones for sure.
Sure.
As well. And I love the picture where it shows the difference between the straight back and the rounded back. Because that's something to really watch for when people are starting to do the deadlifts.
The technique, is very important. I'm always with newcomers to the gym or something that I introduce this exercise to. I'm really cautious and careful with working with them specifically and trying to put them into a scenario where they understand how to hinge, because a lot of it comes from how you move your hips and stick your hips out in order to maintain that flat back position.
Yeah.
But Romanian deadlifts.
Yay!
And then sticking with kind of the glute theme, I guess, weighted hip thrusts or shoulders elevated hip thrusts. I loved from a kind of basic level, therapeutic level, glute bridges. So imagine laying flat on the floor and then squeezing your glutes, stabilizing through your core, raising your hips to the ceiling, body weight only. The progressive aspect would then be doing like what she's doing in the picture with having some sort of weight on it, or even maybe going to a single leg version. But at some point, there is that desire to really strengthen the glutes, maybe even grow the glute muscles as well. And this is an excellent exercise to implement into a routine. So whether it's with a barbell, a kettlebell, I know that there's like what she's on, if you want to call that a machine or a platform, there's like little pegs that you can put resistance bands on and have a resistance band coming over and across the hips. But an excellent one to really get the glute muscles to go through its fullest range of motion. And for those that are wanting to grow their glute muscles, the stretch component. You need to stretch the muscle in order to then mind a muscle connection, squeeze, contract as hard as you can to really then lift the hips into that elevated position. So love this one. I wish everybody would do this.
There you go, everybody.
Right? Even at home, shoulders elevated on the edge of the couch. You don't have to have a fancy weight bench. Couch usually gives the most clearance to kind of pivot, of that just below the shoulder blades to pivot for that motion. But great one.
Yeah, this is a great one.
And my last one. This is the lateral movement. Like you talked about your lateral lunges, we don't spend a lot of time, maybe in my opinion, but we don't spend a lot of time moving side to side or training those muscles that help us in side to side movements. So with this one, I like to call it dynamic hip abduction. Abduction is just a fancy word for, let's say, your leg going from the midline of your body out to the side. So this one targets that glute medius muscle. So notice in this picture how she has her knees bent and her hips back and down in kind of a seated or squatted position. And that just helps with, again, kind of that stretching and contraction aspect to target that outside portion of the glute or hip muscles. And then you're just trying to take those side steps, pressing against the band, activating that outside of the glute. So in like a physical therapy world, this is a good like glute activation, but it can also be good for just overall strength and development. Why I like this one so much, and I especially like it for individuals who have noticeable knock knees or that
Mm-hmm.
valgus knee position, because that positioning somewhat shows kind of references like poor knee stability. So with
Mm-hmm.
developing, not only all your muscles, but helping with that glute medius muscle helps take that knock knee position, kind of helps turn your knees into a more optimal position. So that way, you again prevent or decrease, minimize knee pain, and then also because everything's so connected through the body, you can also help prevent other things. Maybe it's issues with your ankle or issues through your
Mm-hmm.
hips and back. So, but this one is, like I said, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Whether you just simply do like a one step backwards and forwards. I know everyone can't see my feet, but imagine what my lower body's doing. Um, you can even do it, maybe two steps.
Mm-hmm.
I always prefer to have people go kind of a distance for a
Mm-hmm.
certain period of time or a certain repetition. So maybe I usually program it as 12 to 15. So you do 12 to 15 steps to the right, leading with your right leg, right hip, and then
Yeah.
12 to 15 the opposite way. And for some people, that's good enough.
Yeah.
Others, they need to maybe increase the tempo, which also consequently increases the tension of those muscles. So you get more out of it. Um, and sometimes you just need more repetitions or more sets. So,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that one. I can, seeing how the band is always tight too in the picture, right? You're not
mhm.
letting it slack. You're not giving yourself a little rest there. You're keeping that band tight all the time.
Yes,
And
yes.
I think that's
And
awesome. And you can also use bands, like when you're doing squats, just to add another great element, right?
mhm.
I love that too. Just, you're doing squats, but you're also putting that band on to really incorporate keeping those knees like you were talking about, like really getting that good alignment.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Great
So,
ones. Woo. I love those. I'm going to incorporate some of your top 5 to my top 5.
absolutely. And I'm going to progress with mine.
Sounds great.
Well, we went over our time. Yeah, I kind of
I
figured
know.
that with what we wanted to share was not going to be, 15 minutes.
Right.
But I hope that everyone might have learned some new exercises or even just some different concepts or
Mm-hmm.
components when it comes to the exercises. Maybe you're at a point to progress. Oh, I've been doing push-ups on an elevated surface like a table or a box.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'm going to try, go a little bit lower, challenge myself a little bit more.
Love it. I always can add a challenge. That's for sure. Excellent.
Very good.
Well,
Well,
thanks.
that
This is fun.
absolutely. Thanks for chatting with me. Thank you to everyone for joining and sticking with us for an extra 15 minutes. Yes, we will send out the slides. We'll send out the recording as well. So that way you can have a little bit, again, some more details. I think both Carolyn and I kind of use generic terms. So if you are wanting to maybe see a more of a visual, you might be able to Google search, YouTube search something and find adequate direction and information, but we're always here to help too. So you can always reach out to
Absolutely.
us and we can try to figure out how the best we can help you as well.
Yep. We'd love to. Thanks, everybody.